Can also too much sleep be unhealthy?
A very interesting question.
Hello, dog lovers. In this video, I have a special guest for you. I have Lucinda Sykes, a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher and retired medical doctor based in Toronto, Canada. Lucinda received a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Alberta and MD with honors from the University of Toronto. And now you are focused on a program called Joyful After 50, which we'll talk about it a little bit more later. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Saro. I was very interested by your invitation. My special interest now, I'm a lifestyle coach at this point. I've retired from medical practice, but I'm still offering care as a lifestyle coach. And my interest, of course, is sleep, especially for older women, but really for all people.
Exactly.
And sleep comes from the body, Saro. It's part of our human nature, in fact. And the audience here, well, dog owners, you folks know about the body too. You care for your animal, and you as a dog trainer, it's very relevant to be inviting someone like myself who's interested in sleep coaching.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's been a few years that I would say I'm kind of diving in and delving into health-related issues
Yes.
and topics. And I know that, as a human beings, we are busy with life and we forget to take care of simple things in our lives, and one of them being sleep. And I've come across the idea that actually sleep is very important for us and dogs especially as well.
Of course.
And I was one of those people who used to think that you can sleep whenever you're dead.
Yeah.
I
That's
ignored
our culture. That's our
exactly.
society. Yes.
Yeah, I ignored sleep and didn't care about it much. But now I'm more aware of it, and I'm so glad that I have you to enlighten us about the importance of sleep. And one of the first questions that I have is, why is sleep so important from health perspective?
Yes. Oh, yes. It's a very important question, an increasingly interesting question. The science is learning more and more about human sleep. And, I know that you have your book about the 5 dog essentials, which I find fascinating because human beings have essentials also. There are sleep essentials.
Right.
And if we care for ourselves in this way, we're much more likely to sleep. And some would argue that sleep is the most essential. We can go for a while without food or exercise, also essential for healthy life, but certainly we cannot go without sleep. And there's so many problems can ensue, heart problems and diabetes problems and mental health problems all can come to us if we aren't getting sufficient sleep. So we do want to take care of ourselves in that way.
Yeah. And can you tell us, like, what happens when we actually sleep?
Oh, very interesting question. Again, science is enlightening us even in recent decades. Our brain is not asleep. Interesting. We are asleep, of course. The mind is no longer giving us the story of being here, but the body is busy, and the brain is especially busy. We know that through the night, it cycles through a series of particular brain stages, and we know about deep sleep and rapid eye movement sleep or dream sleep. The brain is doing this all through the night, and as well, the brain is supervising the overall care of the body. Our immune system is rebalancing, our cardiovascular system, our endocrine system. They're all being involved in this that we call sleep.
So basically, what I've learned also is that when we sleep, also the body is doing a cleanup.
Yes, lymphatic flow. Have you perhaps been reading about that? I think your audience would be so interested in
Yeah,
it. I
can
know that I
you explain a little bit more of that?
Yes, yes. Well, it was about maybe 10 years ago, actually, that scientific papers began to be published about the discovery that your brain cleans itself in deepest sleep. That
Hmm.
there's actually a change in the configuration of some of the brain cells so that there can be a flow of cerebrovascular fluid through the brain, cleansing the brain of the toxins which have accumulated while we are awake. And this is especially important for us because those toxins, some of them are involved in Alzheimer's disease. And so now that's beginning to solve the question of why is it that people who don't get sufficient sleep are at increased risk for Alzheimer's disease? And now we're understanding that the brain doesn't get a chance to cleanse itself. One
Wow.
sleep scientist, Saro, calls it a power cleanse. That
Mm,
while you are in deepest sleep, your brain undergoes a power cleanse.
that's fascinating. And so that itself, it shows how important sleep is, right?
Yes, yes, we want to have our brain cleansed every night, most certainly.
Exactly. So those who try to avoid sleeping, they're basically digging themselves a big hole of health issues.
Yes, yes. And they're impairing their memories.
Mm,
Brain, every night when we sleep, it processes the memories that we laid down during the previous day. It processes those memories, even moves them to another region of the brain, shall we say, and that's where the memories get stored. But
mm,
if we don't allow the brain to process the memory, it loses that.
mhm.
And further, we know if you learn a skill today, oddly, if you then have a good night's sleep, it's even more likely that you retain the skill the next day. Fascinating, this.
Yes.
It's an active laying down of memories that happens while we sleep.
Right. Yeah, I read an article that was explaining something like, if you are trying to learn something, for example, and if you read the manual before you go to sleep, so just read it quickly and then go to sleep. During the sleep, that information that you have inputted in your brain will be multiplying, and you'll have a better idea of that thing that you're trying to learn the next
Yes.
day and next day.
Yes. So maybe you, like myself, in my younger years, in my schooling, I would occasionally stay up late memorizing for the exam the next day, not realizing that I would have been better served to get a good night's sleep.
Right. Yeah, that's a big tip to everybody who's still studying. I know you mentioned about the brain while we'll sleep. Does the body function or do anything during our sleep as well?
Oh, yes. Such an important question, especially for people with concerns about their, shall we call it, the cardiovascular
Mm,
system,
mm,
your heart and all the blood vessels. Uh, that is very much involved in sleep.
mm,
Uh, we know that there's a change in the innervation of the heart, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems that activate the heart and the cardiovascular system more fully. They rebalance while we are sleeping.
mm,
And if we aren't getting sufficient sleep, that process seems to be impaired. We know that people who don't get enough sleep are more likely to develop hypertension, for example, high blood pressure.
mm,
And we know that people who aren't getting sufficient sleep are more at risk for heart attacks.
mm.
So these are very important questions. And
Yeah.
then it comes down to the body just hasn't had a chance to realign itself as it prefers to do every night while we're sleeping.
Yeah, that's interesting and amazing. Actually, I'm remembering, all these years that I've been working with dog owners and dogs. I've come across dogs who are so-called hyperactive, and most of the time I would, focus on um, not the training part, but well-being of the dog, and I would ask the owners, like, Does your dog sleep enough or sleep at all? And the owners, no, no, my dog is, always looking for something to do, running around, walking around, doing all that. So in general, dogs are not getting enough sleep as.
Yes. Yes, yes, I saw how you emphasize the essentials for the dog, that you don't just worry so much about the reactivity, but you're worrying about the well-being of the dog. And that's true for those of us interested in helping people sleep. It's the
Yeah,
same thing. We help them with the mind if it's too active, of course, but the basics of self-care, they have to be in place too.
right. Right, exactly. And overall, what kind of, let's say, if you're lacking sleep, what kind of health issues can you cause? You mentioned Alzheimer, cardiovascular. What else? What are other?
Well, our metabolic system, diabetes,
Oh, wow.
and we have an increased tendency to obesity.
Hmm.
Uh, our metabolic system is not functioning as well as it might, and our immune system is also impaired. If we don't get sufficient sleep, we're less able to mount a good response to the vaccination we have the next day. And we're also more prone to develop other viral illnesses too.
Hmm.
Yes, and there's even some suggestion that some cancers can be more present in people who haven't gotten enough sleep, and we suspect that again it's the immune system not functioning as it might.
Right. And you mentioned obesity, and I've learned that one of the best ways of actually losing weight is to sleep because,
Yes,
because while you sleep, you're not eating, you're not abusing your body, physically and emotionally and mentally. And basically, you're fasting. And the more time you fast and sleep, the better it is for losing weight, right?
yes, and as well, you are less inclined the next day to feast on
Mm.
salty, fatty foods,
Right.
sweet foods. For some reason, we don't entirely know why. If we haven't had enough sleep, we have even a hunger for sweet and salty foods.
Hmm.
I remember speaking with one sleep scientist who told me that while he was in training, that he would be gorging himself at the donut shop after he spent a whole night working at the sleep clinic. And
Wow.
that's what the research shows, that some studies show you eat an extra 150 calories in this junk food. And we don't entirely know why, maybe something at the hormone
Yeah.
level.
Yeah.
It affects our appetite. If you aren't getting enough sleep, you will actually eat more.
Wow. And that can also not only again lead to health issues such as diabetes and other issues, but also you're gaining weight and
Yes.
you're adding
Yes.
layers of problems on your
The
system.
quality, the quality of our sleep matters too. There was one interesting study that looked at the fact that people who sleep with their televisions on, so the sound is there all
Mhm.
night long,
Yeah.
uh, they have, on average, greater weight than people who don't sleep with the television on.
Mm.
Fascinating, this.
Yeah. Yeah.
The television being on disrupts sleep.
Right. Yeah. Well, speaking of disruption, what happens when we disrupt the sleep?
One weakness that those of us living modernly have is that we tend to stay up late.
Mm,
We like
mm,
to watch videos or scroll through
right.
social media. We call it sleep procrastination.
Mm,
There's even scientists now researching this. And we have this tendency to stay up late, and then often we have to get up early, so we deprive ourselves of sleep. And further, we have irregular habits. We
mm,
maybe stay up until even 1 o'clock one night, and the next night we go to bed at 10, and so on. And the scientists are showing us now that having irregular habits like this make us more prone to heart disease. Fascinating, this, looking
yeah.
at individuals who have this, we call it social jet lag. Some nights they're up late, other nights not so late. And they were compared with those of us who keep a more regular
Yeah.
uh, individual, and the people who were keeping the erratic hours had more hardening of the arteries in the heart.
Wow. So
Oh yes,
let's say this is coming from, again, a dog owner, dog trainer, dog lover.
yes.
Let's say my dogs come and sleep with me during the night,
Good
and
question. I was going to raise that.
on
Yes.
the bed with me, and I'm getting disrupted and they're getting disrupted. So what happens there? What are we benefiting from that or not?
Well, it's an interesting question. On one level, some of the scientists would tell us that we will be having micro awakenings during the night, that our pet, beloved though they are, is causing us to briefly awaken so that we are having a kind of fragmented sleep quality. We're not sleeping as deeply and thoroughly as we might. So there are very likely health consequences. On the other hand, some scientists show us that we love our creature and that by sleeping with our beloved creature, we somehow feel psychologically better. And that too is good for sleep.
Mm.
So it can be a little hard to
Balance
discuss.
it out.
I noticed you. I believe that somewhere in I've been reading your
Uh-huh.
work, and
Yeah.
someone I think left a message at one of your videos about her dog in a crate next to her bed, and
Mhm.
so the dog wasn't sleeping with her, but when the dog cried a little bit, maybe it was a puppy, she would just extend her hand into the crate and let the dog feel her presence, and that would comfort the dog, and they would both go on to have very good sleeps even though she's not getting this micro awakening phenomenon that she
Exactly.
would if her dog was jumping in and out.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the solutions that I find it more, I would say, realistic to
Yes.
both, the human and the dog. And I know, when as us as a human beings, when we cuddle with our dogs, there's lots of neurons and lots of benefits that
Yes.
are exploding in our brains, both humans and the dogs. And
Love is a phenomenon in the body as well. Yes.
exactly, yeah. There are lots of benefits there, but I think on the other hand, um, the lack of proper sleep and disruptions during the sleep, I think, trumps the other part.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I would say, for example, I have had puppies myself, and during the puppy period, yes, you are going to lose some sleep because puppies or senior dogs, they have to get up to do their business and this and that, so you get disrupted. But as they get adult, I think you could kind of say, you know what, we both need good sleep. You can go to sleep to your room. I'll sleep in my room. And I always suggest dog owners, don't separate the dog from you. Put the crate by your bed so they feel you, they sense you, they can smell you, they know you're there as security, and they will have a good sleep and you'll have a good sleep as well. And that's what I do even now. My dogs are always beside our beds, in their crates, and they sleep overnight. And I find, I sleep better and my dogs sleep better.
That some married couples
Yeah.
follow this as well. Sometimes one of the partners is snoring or otherwise disrupting the other partner.
Right.
And as the years go by, they'll often arrange, you know, separate beds or even separate bedrooms. And still, of course, they're very happily married.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I've seen some couples do that too. Yeah.
Yes. It's a
Uh,
personal choice, isn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah. Yeah. But also, yeah, the other point that I was going to make is, I've learned about dogs that dogs are not just like humans, that they sleep straight. What happens most of the times, dogs, they have short sleep periods because dogs being hunters, something, that kind of animal, hunters, they tend to be always aware of what's going on around them, so therefore they don't completely sleep. They have a, I've read something like, they will have a sleep 80% and one eye open to make sure that
Yeah.
everything. But they would go also to deep sleeps. To there are times that the dogs, they sleep and you can hear them snoring or dreaming or anything like that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
They can
So
guard us and
yes,
guard us. And
exactly. Yeah.
yes.
Uh,
Yes.
so
Oh,
we're,
did you know
yeah.
that human beings also have a tendency to segmented sleep? Not so much perhaps as our dog friends, but
Mm.
now we're learning that in pre-modern Europe, the
Wow.
most people slept well, a first sleep and a second sleep. They had a segmented sleep, and we're learning this now in pre-modern cultures worldwide. That
Huh.
us human beings may have even a biological tendency to sleep for maybe 4 hours, have a break for an hour or so, give or take, and then sleep for another, give or take, 4 hours. So we have a segmented quality.
Huh. That's
So
interesting.
sometimes people think they have sleeping problems, so to speak, and actually, at this stage in their life, they are maybe revisiting the more basic human sleep pattern.
Hmm.
It's with the coming of artificial lighting that our sleep has become more compressed.
Hmm.
This is what the very major social scientists are telling us, looking at their historical record.
Wow, that's fascinating too.
Yes, yes, segmented sleep.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not that you're having problem. It's just matter of maybe your system is calling your ancestors
Yes,
and go
yes,
back to the way that we used to sleep.
yes. Sarah, by and large,
Yeah.
that's the way to accept or deal with your sleep issues.
Mm.
Rather than understanding yourself as having an illness or a disease, rather you have a sort of a symptom or an experience or a tendency. And very often what you're observing is that you just aren't practicing the sleep essentials. Just like your dog owners aren't asking their animals to be live full happy lives, that we can be, without realizing it, also maybe disrupting ourselves by not having regular hours and so on. And in this way we can be worsening our sleep problem. But it's not that we are ill. We don't certainly don't need sleeping pills. Please let me serve your audience briefly by the word that sleeping pills, and this is coming from very, very mainstream medical regulatory bodies, sleeping pills should not be part of our life for more than 3 or 4 weeks. We should, at all costs, avoid being on sleeping pills over weeks and months and even years. And especially those of us in the later life, we're even more likely to be, shall we say, dependent upon sleeping pills. This has serious consequences, there's no doubt. Recent scientific paper that came out last year showing that people who were taking the sleeping pills, sleeping 6 to 8 hours, when they were compared to people who were taking no sleeping pills, also sleeping 6 to 8 hours, that the statistics were showing that the people taking the sleeping pills had shorter lifespans. In fact, or they were living for 5 years shorter than were the individuals who didn't use sleeping pills. So please let me alert your audience to this. Your family doctor is equipped to discuss this. You just have to prod them a bit. This is the new research, but the regulatory bodies are telling physicians, please, to don't prescribe sleeping pills for longer than 3 or 4 weeks.
Is that because of the ingredients in the pills?
Well, the effect of the chemicals.
The chemicals, yeah.
Okay, when you come right down to it, most medications are chemicals,
Hmm.
and you know, very effective if we have a tuberculosis or an infectious disease. Chemicals are just the ticket. Maybe we have a problem like, heart problems. Sometimes good chemicals can be useful for us. But chemicals that are just meant to change a symptom, that they're not addressing the underlying problem, they start to be dangerous for us, especially if they're affecting the brain.
Right, right.
We take them for months and even years, we are asking for trouble. And now the research, there's no doubt about it, is confirming that. In fact, if your audience wanted to check this out, maybe I was sharing it with you earlier, Saro, I do have a listing of research papers showing us some of the risks of long-term sleeping pill use.
Yes, I'll share that blog post in the video
Yes,
description. Yeah,
Lucinda Research, just for ease of memory, folks,
yeah, yeah.
lucindaresearch.com. You'll get some blog posts just based on the straight ahead science, and you can even discuss it with your family doctor, perhaps.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And continuing with disruption of sleep and all that. So, can external factors such as noise, lights,
Yes.
even temperature affect the sleep?
We want a sleep nest if you can. And again, maybe this is true for the dogs. You're the authority, but we
Mhm,
want to have a place where we feel comfortable,
mhm,
and we want it to have as little light as possible and to be as quiet as possible. And we would prefer, this is the human animal, the human nature, we would prefer that it be cooler rather than warmer.
mhm.
Maybe even 65 degrees Fahrenheit, if you think in those terms. So it's a
Right.
little cooler than maybe even the temperature in the rest of the house.
Yeah, and definitely I've learned that no TV in the bedroom, no
Yes.
phone, no nothing. It's just a sleeping area
Yes.
that we
You
just
don't want to build habits of other activities such as
right.
TV watching and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. We were talking about not sleeping enough. So, what would you say is an ideal amount of sleep?
Well, it's a good question. And I can say the statistics there
Yeah.
and we can talk a bit, but I also want to suggest to your audience, don't be consumed with the determination to
Mm,
sleep for 7 or 8 hours. And that's
mm,
what the statistics suggest, that if you could, 7 or 8 hours is a good idea. And certainly, if at all possible, you want to sleep more than 6 hours.
mm.
Again, there's quite a number of studies that show that. But on the other hand, don't worry about it. If you are worrying about your sleep, oddly, it's harder to get good sleep.
Mhm.
We know that that is a principal cause of what we call insomnia, what the psychiatrists work with in their practices. People with chronic sleep issues extending over months, and these folks, unfortunately, have become preoccupied with their sleep. So that causes stress. So they go to bed and they begin to stress about not being able to sleep. And then that makes it hard to sleep. So really the way to work with it, and again, I'm thinking of your work, Saro, is I noticed again and again, you're encouraging dog owners to have patience, that it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
And that's how to work with yourself, ladies and gentlemen, to care for yourself, to practice these human essentials. By the way, if you get my booklet, Happy Sleep Secrets, that lays out some of the basic science, such as the sleep nest and the regular hours, and follow that over the weeks and have patience with yourself. And sure, it's true, you do want to be sleeping more than 6 hours, but that's in the long run. The fact that maybe last night you only got 5 hours, so be it. Get up at your regular time. Don't lie in bed hoping to fall asleep. That encourages a regular schedule. Instead, get up at your regular time, even if you didn't get much sleep last night. Live your life if as fully as you can. Avoid the urge to nap unless that's your regular pattern, but don't try to make up the sleep during the day, and then the subsequent night you're much more likely to sleep. And go to bed at your regular time. Don't stay up again with those
Yeah.
videos.
So it's good to have a scheduled time to go to sleep and a scheduled time to get up in
Yes,
the morning.
yes, and the research is really clear on that one. You
Okay.
know, as we were children, maybe we resented that our parents told us it was our
Yeah.
bedtime and we should go. But really, self-care requires that you have that attitude too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was a child, my parents would forced me to go to bed at 9. And that was the best time of the night, that the shows were on, the
Yes.
family members were coming and going, and I had to
Oh dear.
go.
Yes, and that's how it is for us now with sleep procrastination, which is
Yeah,
endemic in modern life. Everybody's scrolling and watching videos,
right.
and they're doing it erratically.
Yeah,
Or if you could just tell yourself, well, I guess my bedtime is 1 a.m., and you just every night and just do that. But it's this back and forth quality that
yeah,
seems to be especially damaging for the body, and maybe especially for the heart.
right.
The heart seems to benefit from regularity, the cardiovascular system more fully.
Mm. And you were saying like 1 o'clock. That brings me another question, follow-up question. Is it healthy to go to sleep late, or is it better to go to sleep? Is there a ideal time
Oh, that's a great question.
that is
It seems
perfect?
to be that, we just are as we are. Do you notice how much variety there is in human beings? We're inherently unique
Mm,
creatures.
mm,
And it's true about, even a simple question is, when do you tend to wake up best and go to sleep best?
mm,
What's your nature in this regard? Some of us are what they call night owls,
right.
and others of us, the sleep scientists, call us larks. And it's just in our nature to wake up with the sun coming up,
Hmm.
and we go to sleep, a couple of hours after the sun sets. Other people, quite the reverse. They have their most creative juices, so to speak, at 10 p.m. and they stay up
Mm,
late, but then they need to sleep in, so to speak. So they still have regularity to their schedule, but it's just a little delayed.
mm. So it's okay to sleep late, as long as, again, you have a certain patterns going on
Yes.
with your sleep.
Again, just looking at the research, if you're someone who likes to stay up late, well, then just do it every night. And
Mm,
then the next morning, you sleep to a certain time, which gives you your 7 or 8 hours, if that's, your typical duration of
mm,
sleep.
mm. So can also too much sleep be unhealthy?
Yeah, very interesting question. Yeah. Well, we do know the statistics are that people who sleep more than 8 or let's say 9 hours, they're sleeping longer. The statistics are is they also have a decrease in longevity. So if you're not getting enough sleep, 6 hours or less, then your longevity is decreased. And as well, if you're sleeping over 9 hours, similarly. But it's interesting, recent research looking at what tends to be the health issues of people sleeping not enough. And that's where the cardiovascular system comes in, the heart.
Mm,
Sleeping, by contrast, too much, other issues are going on.
mhm,
And that makes us suspect that part of why people who sleep too much, shall we say, are not living as long is they may have underlying health issues.
mm.
Okay, when we have other health problems, that may prompt us to sleep longer, certainly if we have infectious diseases, for example.
Mhm. Oh, interesting. So
Yes.
basically, if you're sleeping more than, let's say, 6 hours or 8 hours or even 9 hours, then
Yeah.
there's an underlying health issue that
Yeah,
you
it's
should.
very possible. And that might be the reason that people who are sleeping extra hours uh, have more health problems and don't live as long. Okay, this is all statistics now. This is not fate, ladies and gentlemen. This does not mean that maybe you're someone who sleeps 9.5 hours and that you're fated to have a shorter life, because there's always exceptions. Okay, there's so much variety. And so science is based on statistics, on averages, but we all get to be our unique selves. So we don't need to be afraid if we happen to have habits that are outside the norm. But it's good to know about the norm so you can consider yourself. Much as if you're a dog owner, you consider the well being of your dog and try to understand what's going on. We can take the same attitude to ourselves. So we aren't necessarily enforcing the law, but we're learning what the sleep scientists tell us is best for us. And then we think about it, whether it's important for us too.
Right, that's correct. Yeah. So let's talk about napping. Is napping good or bad?
Oh, what a question. There's some dispute, shall we say, in the medicine and sleep science world. Uh, some cultures, that's what normal people do. They have a siesta, shall we say, in the middle of the day. Sometimes it's quite lengthy. It can be even up to a couple of hours. And then at the nighttime sleep, it's proportionately shorter. At least that's what I'm told in one research paper I was looking at. That so people are still getting the same duration of sleep, but it's just segmented. So there's that segmented sleep quality there in the in the society's habit of siestas. Uh, but as well, if you're someone who just feels you're not getting enough sleep at night, you would probably be well advised to give up any siesta habit you may have and just, if you can, sleep over the course of the day or keep your nap to maybe, shall we say, 20 minutes, 30 minutes max. So you shorten your nap and you may find that that's then going to give you more sleep in the nighttime.
Interesting. I used to live in Greece, and during July and August was extremely hot, to
Yes.
the point that even, as I was working there as well, even workplaces, they would say, we're shutting down for a couple of hours, go,
Sensible.
yeah, go siesta or do whatever
Yeah.
you want to do,
Yeah,
relax.
blast the air conditioning instead.
Yeah, and that was normal. Like, it was part of the culture, because the weather, it was affecting the quality of the work that it was being produced during at least summer times. I've noticed myself, like, during the day, I love to have a short nap. I'm a more of a morning person. I like to work in the morning. I'm more productive in the morning. And then midday, I kind of start slowing down, and
Yeah.
that's when I need a short nap to bring my energy back on to continue.
Maybe experiencing a change in hormone at that point. We call it a mid-afternoon slump.
Right.
There you are. Yes,
Yeah.
and you're living with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I find that as soon as I do that, I have a nap. I recharge myself, and I become a more productive individual in the afternoon. And the other thing that I've noticed also, like past few years, I have slowed down a little bit in my lifestyle a little bit.
yes,
Whereas I used to be working 12, 15, 16 hours a day, and I would just, as a business owner, my brain was always working, and I couldn't sleep well. But in the past few years that I've slowed down a little bit, my sleep has improved because I've paid attention to the quality of my life, including sleep. We've removed all the computers and TVs and all
yes,
the gadgets from the room, and it's just a bed. uh,
yes.
and that's it. And we just go there and sleep. That's all we do. And we noticed that our sleep improved. Like, I used to wake up around 3 o'clock. So that's my other question that I have. Many people tend to wake up in the middle of the night. For some people, tends to be 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock,
Yes,
4
yes.
o'clock. What is happening there, and how can we go
Well,
around the problem?
yes, again, this is where I begin to think about this segmented sleep
Hmm.
quality that and
Ah,
this is just recent thought. Saro, a terrific book came out 10 years ago. Oh, what's the chap's name? REHR, I believe, a social scientist and historian, more importantly, who has researched and really apparently confirmed when I read the book so much research evidence that before the industrial era in Western Europe, the habit of all peoples was to sleep in two segments. And so there is some thought now that this is a natural tendency in the human being because we see it in other cultures around the world also. It's the fact of artificial lighting that has affected our standard or socially accepted life style of all of us we anticipate that we should be sleeping in a single block, but we may be subtly up against the fact that human beings in some ways may be designed to sleep in two segments over the night.
Interesting. Like, what you mean is, let's say, before industrializing our lives, which, let's say, 200 years ago, 500 years ago.
Sure, sure. The
Uh,
change started in the so-called 17th century. So up
right.
until the
Yeah.
17th
Yeah.
century, and we stayed all the way back to the Greeks. Some of
Right.
the
Yes.
early classical authors speak
Yeah.
about the first sleep. So that's
Mm.
why it's often called the first sleep and the second sleep.
And that was during the night, was it?
Yes, yes. And then Christian practice uh, has taken advantage of that, and we have starting up in the 6th century there the Christian practice of vigils and
Mm.
rising in the middle of the night to pray and to recite psalms. And again, it's not that the Christian tradition was enforcing that, but it now seems that this was what the monks were doing anyway. You see,
Mm.
if you don't have artificial lighting, you go to bed more early.
Right. Yeah.
And then you don't need to be sleeping all those hours. And our biology seems to be that we wake up sometime in the middle of the night. And fascinating science now showing that those are hours where we tend to have calmness of mind. It's not true for modern people. Modern people, their minds get busy. But the evidence seems to be that there's even a kind of endocrine or hormone basis for a quality of calm in that intervening space before the second sleep.
I came across another study that was saying that, for example, you mentioned Greeks. In Roman times, Greeks even, they used to eat lunch, finish lunch, I mean, their daily food, daily intake of food by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because soon it will get dark and they don't want to cook in dark and
Yes.
prepare dinner and
Very
eat that.
practical when you think of
Yeah,
it. Yes.
exactly. Yeah. So the last meal was around 2 or 3 o'clock.
Right. So no wonder they went to sleep
Yeah.
early.
Yeah. And that's what I'm thinking. Like, I'm not sure, but the other day, a few days ago, we had a power outage, and it was around, I would say, 8 o'clock or so, 8 p.m. Uh, and we didn't have anything on, right? We couldn't get on internet, we couldn't get on
Ah,
phone and stuff, but you can watch TV, you can't do anything, right? So it kind of gave us this feeling that this
yes.
must have been the same, like
Yes.
100 years ago. That's how it
Yes.
was. You turn light up a
And your body is adapted for this.
gas. Yeah. uh,
Yes.
I enjoyed it, actually.
Yes.
In a way, I enjoyed that break. That there was no power, nothing, and it was dark and quiet, and there was a candlelight. And I've read also that I've read and also I've heard from older friends that they used to study under candlelights.
Yes. Yes. And that was Western Europe for hundreds of years. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And that people would often study in the middle of the night. That was
Yes.
also a time for prayer, for
Hmm.
socializing, for thievery, if you happen to be of that character.
Yeah.
There was all manner of activities happening right there in the middle of the night.
Yeah. And then
And we go back to sleep.
and then they go back to sleep. Yeah, go back to sleep, and wake up when the sunlight comes out, right?
Yes, that's it. It's the sun. We're
Yes.
going to sleep when the sun goes down, and then we're leaving our beds when the sun comes up.
Exactly. Yeah. Like some dog owners, they tell me, for example, how long would it take for my dog to learn this or do this? And I would say, 30 suns and moons.
Yes, yes,
Because their time zone is uh, goes around the sun and the moon.
yes.
They don't say, oh, it's a 5 o'clock or something. They're saying, oh, the sun is there or there or there, or it's coming up. It's
Our
going in.
body is doing this as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think, in general, I hope our listeners, dog owners, they benefited out of this information that you shared, and
Yes.
realize that sleep is very important, is one of the parts of our lives that we tend to put aside and say, what, I'll take care of it later. But I think is one of the simplest and most important part of our lives that we should be considering to pay more attention to it, and then figure out other solutions for other parts of our problems that we have. But the simplest solution is sleep. And one other thing that is that, trying to improve your health starts by simply improving your sleep. And if you get better at what you do in during sleep, and you get better, you can improve your dog's life as well.
Yes, and it comes down to the basic self-care principles that
Exactly.
you extend to the care of your dog and you extend it to yourself. Yeah, again, I invite people to check out the self-care principles in my Happy Sleep Secrets.
Right.
Folks, you can get that at lucindagift.com, free, of course, and it will give you principles maybe roughly similar to what you're describing in your book of the essentials for dog.
Mm. Yes, I'll have all those links in the description below. And I
Yes.
wanted you also to kind of touch on the joyful after 50 plus
Oh, yes. Well, that's my outreach for women
program that you
over
have. Yes.
50. Yes, I have a particular outreach. I've had it for years, even at the clinic, of course. An outreach for women over 50. If you would like to subscribe, we send science-based newsletters. I usually get them out every week, and you can see the type of topics that I'm interested in. And I do love to share this information. So if you would like to sign on to the newsletter, you will do that if you do indeed download Happy Sleep Secrets, and that'll automatically sign you up, unless, of course, you can unsubscribe at any point.
Right,
And
right.
as well, I'm teaching mindfulness programs for my ladies after 50. And
Mhm.
so I do have a course coming up, Mindfulness After 50. So that's another.
Good.
Well, but if you join the newsletter, then by gosh, you'll hear about that.
That's great. Yeah. So lots of ways to contact you and get in touch with you.